Hello, today we are going to talk about rational numbers. We've already discussed rational numbers a little bit throughout the school year. If you go back to the video converting fractions, you'll see that we talked about how to convert a fraction to a decimal, as well as how to convert a decimal to a fraction. So those are two important things that you need to make sure you understand. So rewatching the video may be a good idea if you need to. But first of all, rational numbers are numbers that show you part of a whole. And what we've learned this school year, excuse me, is that decimals, percents, and fractions are all three types of rational numbers. And since there are all three types of rational numbers, it's safe to say that you can convert or change a number into the three different forms. And it's all saying the same thing. For example, 50%, 5/10, and 1/2 are all saying half of a whole. Now, what we are going to focus on in this video is converting between fractions and percents. First of all, how do you change a fraction to a percent? Well, step number one is to change the fraction to a decimal. Again, we've learned how to do that already, but I'll come over here and work it out. Numerator divided by denominator, decimal point, and begin your dividing. 4 goes into 37 times, with 2 left over. Carry the 0 down. 4 goes into 25 times evenly. So what we have is the decimal point 75. Step number 2 is to move that decimal point back twice. So the decimal point that is in front of the 7, we're going to move back 2 times. Now it is behind the 5, making this 75%. Now, going backwards, percent to a fraction, a little easier. You're going to write the percent amount over 100 because the word percent does mean per 100. So the example that we worked out earlier, 75%, well, it's supposed to go back to the fraction 3/4. So let's follow the steps and see if we get 3/4. Step number 1 is to rewrite the percent over 100. So this is going to be 75 over 100. And then step number 2 is to simplify that fraction. Well, there's a lot of numbers actually that can go into 75 and 100, but the biggest number that I can think of would be 25. So I'm just going to simplify or reduce both the numerator by 25 as well as the denominator by 25. 75 divided by 25 gives us 3. 100 divided by 25 gives us 4. So what we've learned is that 75% does in fact convert to the fraction 3/4. Next thing I want to talk about is changing a percent to a decimal. So now we're going a little backwards here. You're going to move the decimal point forward 2 times. So if they give you the percent 75%, and they're asking us to change it to a decimal. Well, on the previous slide, we learned that it's 0.75%, but this is why. Right now, the decimal is understood to be behind the 5, but according to this step, you'll just move it forward twice, giving us the decimal 0.75. In order to change a decimal to a percent, well, that was on the previous slide that we just worked out together. So you can always rewind the video and rewatch that part if you need to. Now, comparing rational numbers. Why do all this converting in the first place? Well, in order to compare rational numbers, you're going to have to convert the rational numbers into the same form. So, for example, if they gave you the fraction 1/4 and they're asking you to compare 1/4 to negative 1.3, the first step is to change both the rational numbers into the same form. So I'm going to change this fraction to a decimal. Numerator divided by denominator. The decimal point goes up. Add the 0. That's 2. Bring down the 0. And what we have is 0.25. So in step 1, we have changed 1/4 to 0.25, and and the other rational number was already a decimal, negative 1.3. Step 2 is to place both rational numbers on a number line. So I'm just going to come over here, sketch out a number line. and I'm going to put my 0 down. Of course, 0 separates negatives and positives. The first rational number is 0.25, and it's a positive 0.25. So we'll go over here, just estimating that it will fall in there. Negative 1.3. Well, let's say if this was negative 1, then negative 1.3 would fall behind that. So I'm just estimating it to be about right there. Now, step number 3, read the number line. As you're reading the number line from left to right, the number that you come to first would be considered the smallest rational number. All right? So as we're reading, the first rational number that we come to is negative 1.5. Therefore, negative 1.5 is smaller, making the fraction 1/4 larger between these two.